Hello, everybody. This is Elizabeth Clare
Hey,
Brewington
hello.
with
Mhm.
Nielsen, and we are with Brightside Global Trade TV. I am so honored to have an award winning children's author, an author of five amazing books. And I highly encourage you to get the whole collection because all the books are very precious. But today we're going to talk about asking the right questions. And I don't want to take away the thunder of this presentation because Sharon is going to tell you why it's important to teach your children about asking the right questions. And it's a very important topic about how you can protect your child from getting abused. So over to you, Sharon, and thank you for doing this today.
Absolutely. And thank you all for showing up today. And thank you for allowing me to share this panel with you. Like I said, my name is Sharon Lennon Fordham, and I am an author of a 5-book series entitled Addie B 123. Now, each one of our books address a topic that is beneficial to a child socially, emotionally, and physically. Some of the topics that we cover in our books are bullying, low self-esteem and self-confidence issues, friendship and teamwork, body safety and protection, and work and family life balance. Now, tonight's discussion was actually inspired by one of my books, Teach Me Safe Touch, Don't Touch. Now, this particular book addresses body safety and protection. And the intended purpose of this book is to empower children with the knowledge that could help prevent them from becoming a victim of sexual child abuse. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. And of course, the information surrounding sexual child abuse is very vast and is, of course, impossible for me to include everything in this presentation. But what I have decided to do was highlight the very important key points. The first thing that you will see here, let's get this going, is a very short video that explains what the book is and why we created the book. It's only about a minute long or so.
Sadly, millions of children are sexually abused every day by someone they know, love, and trust. Unfortunately, many of these precious, innocent little ones will never disclose the horrible crimes being committed against them. Why is this, you may ask? To name just a few reasons, the child may be afraid of their abuser, embarrassed, or worst of all, the child may feel as though these acts of violations are normal because they began before he or she could even walk or speak. But with your help, we can protect one child at a time from sexual abuse, starting with yours. Teach Me, Safe Touch, Don't Touch was written and audibly designed with children's voices to easily teach your child at an incredibly early age about the right and wrong ways or places to be touched by a predator before things progress. It contains safe, child-friendly illustrations and information in which you can communicate to your precious little one. Keeping our children safe from the unthinkable is all of our responsibilities. So please download this book today.
Teach Me, Safe Touch, Don't Touch, from the Addie B 123 Children's Book Collection. Thank you for loving me and keeping me safe.
Would your child tell? That is a question that I would like for you to keep in mind as we progress. According to the CDC, about 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 13 boys in the United States experience child sexual abuse. Someone known and trusted by the child or the child's family members actually perpetrates 91% of child sexual abuse. Many of the children wait to report, and some never actually report these abuses at all. And as parents, we tend to believe or want to believe that our kids will come to us. They will tell if something like this were to happen. But I know this firsthand that this is not always the case because I never told what happened to me. In fact, my mother will find out when she views this film. I never told anyone, but I'll talk about that a little later in the presentation. What is child sexual abuse? Child sexual abuse refers to the involvement of a child, which is a person less than 18 years old, in sexual activities that violates the laws or social taboos of society that he or she does not fully comprehend, does not consent to, or is unable to give informed consent to, and is not developmentally prepared for and cannot give consent to. Is not developmentally prepared. Like the video indicated, some of these incidences occur when the child, before the child could even walk or speak. And this becomes normal behavior to the child. They never see anything wrong with them because it started happening to them so early on. This reminds me of an incident that I witnessed along with my daughter, and I'll go through that as quickly as I can. My daughter and I went to a shopping center. We were going to go shopping, and we pulled up into the parking lot. And my daughter, for some reason, was looking for something, so we didn't immediately get out of the car. While we were sitting there, another car pulled up in front of ours, parked in front of ours, and there in that car was an adult male and a young girl. She looked to be about 6 or 7 years old. So I'm waiting for my daughter, and all of a sudden, because I'm looking around, and then I locked eyes on the couple again because they're, of course, in front of me. All of a sudden, he leans over, he grabs her face, pulls it toward him, and started kissing her as if he was kissing a grown woman, an adult woman. And that shocked me. It wasn't a friendly father kiss. It was a kiss as if he was, quote unquote, making out with this little girl in the car. And he held on to her face and he kissed her. He just kept kissing her. And in my shock, I bumped my daughter. I said, look at what's happening. And she looked because I wanted to see if I'm really seeing what I'm seeing here. And as my daughter saw, I grabbed my phone because I wanted to record it. But by the time I got my phone in position to record, he had stopped. And so they got out of the car and went into the store. My daughter and I got out after it was clear. I didn't want to confront him because I didn't want to put myself or my daughter in danger. So when he left, when they went into the store, I went around and I took a picture of because I didn't know what to do. I took a picture of his license plate, and they happened to have been going to the same store that we were going into. But to make a long story short, I didn't know what. I felt helpless because if I had called the police, what was I going to say? There's no proof of anything. I saw this man doing this, nothing could, so I felt helpless, and what was so shocking to me is that the little girl was kissing him back like it was a normal thing. And that's what I meant when I said not developmentally prepared. They start doing these things before the child could even walk or speak. So they think it's normal behavior. This little girl had no idea that she was being violated in that fashion. And that is the one thing that really pushed me to create this book, because I felt helpless. I had no proof. I couldn't approach him because I didn't want to put myself or my daughter in danger, so it's sexual child abuse is out there and is right up under our noses. We just have to be aware and see what's going on. I always get choked up when I talk about that. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, the possible signs of child sexual abuse. Changes in behavior. The child may begin to be aggressive, withdrawn, clingy, have difficulty sleeping, have regular nightmares, and even start wetting the bed. They may begin avoiding the abuser. The child may seem to dislike or seem afraid of a particular person and try to avoid spending time alone with them. Sexually inappropriate behavior. Children who have been abused may begin behaving in sexually inappropriate ways or use sexually explicit languages. Physical problems. The child may develop health problems, including soreness in the genital and anal areas, and even develop sexually transmitted infections. And problems at school. An abused child may have difficulty concentrating, learning, and of course their grades as a result would drop from this. And these are just a few of the signs. There, like I said, the information is so vast, but for the sake of time, these are the key points that I chose selected to discuss. Now, who commits child sexual abuse? People who sexually abuse children can be an adult, an adolescent, or even a child themselves. Around a third of child sexual abuse is carried out by usually an older child or children or young people. Now, in my case, when I was about 6 years old, an older family member of mine attempted to abuse me sexually. And when I say attempted, he did not succeed because I eventually screamed and yelled out and cried out, which made him stop. And the thing is, family members were around, they were outside, but somehow he lured me into the house, into a back bedroom. I had no reason to think anything that anything peculiar or strange was happening because I had never been introduced. I'm only a kid. I don't know anything about sex. There was no internet at the time, so I had no reason to be alarmed until he sat me on the bed and he placed his hands on my shoulders as such and laid me back. He didn't push me back forcefully, but he laid me back. Now I'm confused, but I still don't know what's going on because I don't know anything about sex. I was not alarmed, but it was strange. I didn't want to be in there. I wanted to be outside with everyone else. It wasn't until he laid himself on top of me when I became alarmed and knew that I don't know what's happening, but I know I don't want to be in this situation. So as he held me down, he was fidgeting with his hand down below, bumping my leg. I don't know what he was doing because, like I said, I have no knowledge of this. I know and understand now that what he was doing was actually unzipping his pants, his zipper. But I did not like to, so I cried. I started crying and I cried louder and louder until he became afraid and then let me out and out of the room. But even when I got back out where everyone was, I never said anything. I don't even know why I never told, but I didn't, so I don't have a good reason as to why I didn't tell. I didn't even know what to say. He laid on top of me, but I don't know anything about sex. I don't know anything. Then I was just a kid, 6 years old. So even though it could happen to a child, it's not always the first thought to say, of course, my child will tell me. That's not always the case. About 9 out of 10 children know or are related to their abusers. Child sexual abuse often happens in either the child's home or the abuser's home. And you may also notice that an abuser will give a child special treatment, give them gifts, treats, and also always want to take them somewhere, trying to find an opportunity to be alone with the child. The long-term effects of child sexual abuse. In the long term, people who have been sexually abused may often suffer from depression, anxiety, eating disorders, or PTSD. They're also more likely to harm themselves or become involved in criminal behavior, misuse alcohol or drugs, and even resort to committing suicide. Now, what can we do to prevent or stop child sexual abuse? It is so important for us to pay very close attention to those subtle changes in your child's behavior. And make sure that your children know that they can talk to you about anything that bothers you or confuses them. It is so important to create that environment where your child feels comfortable, that they can come to you for everything. I made certain that my daughters were able to talk to me about anything, and my son. Educate your children about the differences between good secrets, such as a birthday surprise, and bad secrets, such as those that make the child feel uncomfortable and unsafe. And please teach children the accurate names of private parts and the difference between touches that are okay and not okay. Touches that are okay and not okay. And this is where Teach Me Safe Touch, Don't Touch comes into play. Because this book is designed to teach children the places that is appropriate and inappropriate to be touched. This book is available in both English and Spanish. It is now in a print combo. As a matter of fact, I have it here. It is in both English and Spanish in one book. And it's also available in an interactive ebook where children's voices are used and they are reading the books. The book is designed to be explained by a responsible adult. Because like I said, you cannot cover everything in one book. So it is important, so very important for that parent or adult to really be thorough, because every situation is different. There is no cookie cutter situation. The book is very simple with child-friendly illustrations. And it's so very easy to comprehend. And like I said, even though it's easy to comprehend, it's simple with child-friendly illustrations, it is designed, and I stress designed, to be explained by a responsible adult. And this book also creates the opportunity for a dialogue to open up this topic that most people believe that is taboo. They don't want to discuss it, but this book is designed beautifully to create that opportunity for dialogue. So what I want to ask the panel is, what would your child do? Would your child know what to do in this situation? You know, have you discussed with your child these possible issues that could possibly occur? And this concludes my presentation. But I'd like to open the floor up for any type of tips, anything that you would have to offer, questions, to get the dialogue going about this very, very serious situation. And I thank you guys. So I will go ahead and stop there. Go.
So Sharon, I work in a school. I've worked there for 18 years, and every year we have to do an in-service training on this topic.
Okay.
Every year. And I know that this particular, child sexual abuse is a training that's mandatory for elementary, middle school, and high school staff at every level. But
Yes.
the way you presented it today definitely spoke to my heart, because it was very heartfelt. It was, there is a difference between just listening to facts and listening to the heart behind the facts. And your self-disclosure and, really made everything seem, it just made the whole issue very immediate. And I think that your presentation, if, for example, hypothetically, if an educational institution were to invite you to present this topic with the book, I can see what an impact it would make.
Thank you.
Because that's just, because I've seen it. Every year I go through child sexual abuse training, but it's like rote now. You just listen to the facts and they just hit your ears in through one ear, out through the other. Because, it's just like it's required, it's mandatory. But thank you so much for your presentation. It spoke to me.
Thank you.
Especially your self-disclosure. I respect that.
That was quite amazing, Sharon. That was incredible. I want to offer up, just kudos to you for sharing this information with us. And I want to speak to a larger audience, because our broadcasts go out on demand. And while there are people who are, struggling perhaps with understanding the balance or finding balance, perhaps there's an adult and perhaps they were abused, and so they have no recourse but to abuse as well, and then looking for solace or ways to work around that. I just have to thank you for bringing that up, and you did it in such a clean and clinical way. We this culture is a
Stop.
very phenomenal culture, but we have our challenges. And when it comes to issues of sex and understanding sexual maturity and understanding the respect that each of us needs and demands, many of us are there and many of us are not, and how to get the balance for it and helping us overcome the issues that we face. I mean, and it opens up to the aspect that was and how we subject our kids and youth to trauma. I mean, we were at a service station. My wife was with last night, and she said I went in to buy something, and she said there was a little boy who was all alone, 10 years old, and he was walking around asking for where his parents were, and yeah, and who knows, the parent might have dropped him off and left him. They tell me that at Walmart that happens all the time. A parent will just leave the child at Walmart and just forget about them, and kids, I mean, they have the largest cases of these kind of things happening. And even, I mean, yeah, and even in there are people who come from abroad, China primarily. They'll come to America, they'll have children, and if it's not a boy, if it's a little girl, they'll leave the child at the hospital.
Yeah.
And there's so many cases of this happening that, I mean, our culture, we have to find a way to come to grips with, balancing children's growth, understanding where they are, and it's unique trauma. It's very unique trauma. But I mean, in the case that you described, we have to call the cops. We have to call the cops, tell them, take pictures, call the police,
Report.
tell them what
Yeah.
happened, and tell them, I don't know who he was. All I know, he was kissing a little girl in a way that was inappropriate. And here's his picture, here's his license tag. You could track him down and see what's going on with that. But this is huge. I mean, I don't know how many cases this takes place per year in America and around the world. And so, I mean, and we walk around plainly, and nobody knows who are the people of impact in these environments like that. And you can't look at a person and say, "Oh, they're child abusers. Oh, they've been abused." So I don't know. All we can do is do the best we can with understanding. But people who do these kind of things, they have to be called out. I mean, and let them at least come to terms with understanding who they are and what they're doing wrong themselves. Perhaps they would self-correct, or maybe they won't. And I don't know. I mean, you bring up a very tacit aspect. It's I think about that, and I think about all the different unique circumstances, and our culture doesn't create a whole lot of numbers about this. I mean, perhaps if we knew what the numbers look like, maybe we'd be more careful, like that. Even Walmart, this led me to think. Well, let me see if Walmart publishes any details about the number of cases where children were left at the store. I mean, I'm sure they have a protocol or a process that they follow, but this is quite sobering. It's very sobering when you think about that. I mean, I had the good privilege of growing up in a two-parent home, and my parents, they were tough, but I mean, there were no issues like this where we had to face and come to understand. You grew up like normal children.
Donna and
Blight.
and Donna have raised their hands.
Blight has a question. Yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to comment. First of all, Sharon, thank you so much for your vulnerability, your candor. This topic, just to give the audience that's out there listening an idea of how important it is that what Sharon is doing is out of all my sessions today, the first 3 were adults who have not recovered from childhood sexual abuse. And if you can get to these children earlier, there's so much more of an opportunity. Once you get into adulthood, as you guys were saying, it creates body confusion, relationship confusion, sexual confusion, and you can feel attached to people and confused about what that means. And because as
Yes.
Sharon so eloquently and importantly pointed out, that you are still a child in some ways, trapped in an adult's body. And
Mm-hmm.
what comes to mind when we're thinking of that horrible thing you witnessed at the store is
Mm-hmm.
then you get into the DCS workers are also have their hands tied, and they get burnt out because you call and then they can't get anyone to prove it because the
Right.
child is protective of the parent, and the
Yes.
other parent. And then the only other thing that, and I feel for them as well, because I know that when they hear these things, they want to take action as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I'm thinking about the children getting dropped off at Walmart, which I'm sure in many cases is abandonment, you have to wonder if some of these people are trying to get them away from abuse.
And that is true.
You
That
know,
is something to think
it's like
about.
maybe someone will take them. Maybe they're getting beaten in the home. I try to
Mm-hmm.
think the best of people as I can, but maybe some of these people can't leave the abusive situation, you know.
Right.
But it's just such a confluence of horrible things. And
Mm-hmm.
I think what Ramona said is 100% accurate. These trainings in a lot of these places are just sterile, and people
Yes.
stop listening. But with someone with your charisma, your passion, being a mother and a grandmother, they've got to get you in these places because what you're sharing is really important. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anna, you had raised your hand. Yeah.
We can't hear you.
Donna, you have to unmute.
Oh, I'm
Thank
so
you.
sorry. I'm sorry. I always forget that. Such a dope. Uh, so Sharon, just a quick comment, so many parents went to homeschooling when the pandemic hit. So lots more, thousands of children now don't go to a public education setting. They're getting homeschooled, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Or they went to private schools. Private school enrollment now is out the roof. Ramona mentioned in the public school system, it's probably inadequate, but they've got some policies, they've got some training, those kind of things going on. Where I think your program would potentially have even more influence is with that other group of kids that are no longer in the public education system, because I don't know that, private schools have this level of some kind of a formal program of instruction or awareness. I don't know that homeschool kids would get this level of awareness because you're relying on that mother or father that's teaching the children to have this kind of book available and have this discussion. So that's a wide open area for you to consider for influencing a lot of families, because so many families did resort to private or homeschool environments for education. So
I
applaud what you're doing. It's something we don't want to talk about, but it's there, it's a reality that we have to deal with. Now, I did have one quick question. I know that child abuse can happen at any age, unfortunately, even very young children. At what age, though, do you think the children would really understand this material and be able to, really apply it to their, behavior?
Well, I told my daughter, because I have a 3-year-old granddaughter, even at 3 years old, because the illustrations are so very simple. It's very, very easy to comprehend. But I say as early as 2 or 3. Kids are very smart. They're smarter than we give them credit for. We are. And with repetition, it will become, second nature. That child automatically knows. That child will automatically know if there's a responsible parent or an adult that could explain. And that's what I said again. It requires a responsible adult to explain to the child.
So, a lot of these kids,
great job.
Since the beginning of the fall season, they had these sports groups, soccer and little flag football, etc., etc. In my opinion, this sort of training and this sort of presentation needs to be mandatory for all these children's sports groups.
I agree.
Because sports groups or ballet or all these fine arts, everyone needs to go through this training, age appropriate, before they go onto the field or before the season commences.
I agree.
That's a captive audience right there.
Thank you.
It's funny because 2 years ago, Ramona did the moderation. We had a women business empowerment conference, and we had 3 victims of sexual abuse. We had 2 that were child abuse. In fact, I was just on the phone with one of them, and Betty was just telling me her story. that, her mother sold her to prostitution. And the man was in her house, in her bedroom, and her mother was in the next room. So when you think about that, and she's just come out of hospital, and she was telling me she's got all these complications because of the rape, that she still for years and years and years and years, it's something that doesn't just get wiped out. And she
Right.
really wanted to come to this session, but she just came out of surgery, so she was like,
Oh,
I'm
yes.
still recovering. So she'll be on the 15th. But when you hear how your whole life is ruined because of this,
It is.
it's just never ending. And I think those statistics are very real that you presented with CDC. So thank you for giving us such a
Thank you.
comprehensive approach. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I thought it
I
was a great
appreciate it.
presentation, Sharon.
Thank
I
I
you
think
so
we
much.
should
appreciate
do
it.
it again. Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Blythe.
One more thing, I know Sharon knows about this, but have you seen, Sharon, like, one of the things I've seen is that also those who are victimized very young are much more likely to be re-victimized over and over. And the way I
Yes.
would describe it is that pedophiles and predators smell vulnerability. They know
Mm-hmm.
the vulnerabilities, they know the signs to look for. And
Mm-hmm.
then what happens is the child then gets older and it happens again, and then they get raped, and then they find people, and then they think, oh, it's all me over and over again. But
Yes.
so the other reason it's so important to teach this early is because the more it happens, the more likely it is to happen.
To
And
happen.
these families have multiple predators and
Yes.
intergenerational and everything. It's really, so again, just thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it, everyone.
Any
Well,
more questions?
I
This
have
is a
one
big
more.
topic.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, go
I have
ahead.
one more simple comment. I mean, and part of what I'm looking at a larger audience, and if there are people out there who are subjected and subject to these kind of behaviors, I mean, I'm sure there are networks or there are formulas or there are community groups that can help people walk through this kind of trauma, like that. I mean, of course, we have to spend a little time collectively pulling those people out and exploring that and talking these matters through, so that, I mean, because there must be balance. I mean, so someone who's committed these kind of, character behaviors before, getting them, well, I guess what they got, some sexual predator laws out there of people who committed such acts, and they go on some predator list. And, of course, these people cannot and should not be working around children or
Right.
group things like that. And so we have to enforce those things. But once we see that kind of behavior, we have to call it out. We have to call it out, and we have to let the authorities call it out. I mean, and that's all. I mean, but there's got to be solutions, and we've got to behave in a way that we believe and we know and we're certain there are solutions and that we can help fix it. Now, we're probably a long ways away from getting it corrected, but the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step.
Absolutely.
Talking about it, understanding it, bringing enforcement into the picture, protecting, I mean, because the more, I think it was 1 in 13, you said the cases were, we
For
could bring,
boys.
yeah, to 2 in 5, then, I mean, we may not be there, but we get there. And
Mm-hmm.
the number of cases for girls was what?
1 in 4.
1 in 4. Oh, boy. Oh my goodness. I mean, and that number needs to be 1 in 20 or something like that, the numbers should come down. We're going to have to spend some time. Is there a presidential forum on this kind of thing that you know of?
I don't. And
Okay.
that's why I'm asking for tips or information or anything. And I will do some more research on
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Well, we've worked with the Justice Department of North Carolina. In fact, I'm going to have to first get on their schedule before we set the date, because they're very busy people. But we've done a lot with domestic violence on this channel. And so the next episode with Sharon is September the 15th. And I think I'd like to repeat this topic, Sharon. And I'll
Okay,
bring
we
you
can do
with the
that.
other books for the other days. But I think this is a
Absolutely.
very necessary topic.
Okay.
And we'll invite the justice teams to come in as well, because this
Sounds
is
great.
something that I think the way you've presented it is a
Mhm.
way I have never seen before. I've seen this topic been talked about, but I think the way your books have been written, it's necessary that you put this in people's hands, because
Yes.
I never thought about preparing a child. And I think that is essential, because then
Mhm.
the child knows what to do. So this is very important. Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
So any more questions?
I just wanted to say, let people know where they can get the book. It is definitely
Yes.
on Amazon right now. And it's also on my website, Addie B123. It's on my website.
thank you for that.
Definitely.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you.
It's going to be on our book list as well. We've got quite a few children's authors, and I'm trying to get them to come on September 15th. So if you're watching this episode, join us again on September 15th. We'll be doing this all over again. And if you
Yes.
have questions, or if you've been abused and you want to come on the show and talk about your story, just let us know, write us a comment. And the book is available everywhere where books are sold, and we'll make sure that the link is available in with this video as well. So thank you, Sharon Linen Fordham,
Thank
for
you.
this excellent
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you so
And
much.
thank you, thank you,
Thank
thank
you,
you
guys.
so
Thank you
much.
so much.
Very
Thank you,
good.
Sharon.
Hey,
Yeah.
hey, Sharon, before
Uh-huh.
we wrap up on your